Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Well, we cap off our month of remakes with a movie that we teased. We teased it last episode. We said this is probably one of the most notorious remakes. We had a few guesses actually come through, but nobody guessed.
Oh, wait, before you say, I didn't see that. What were the guesses?
Oh, somebody guessed, I'm sorry, there was one guess that came through, and that was the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
Which is also terrible, notoriously bad, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't even seen it.
Oh, don't. It's awful. When we talked about doing this month, that was one of the ones I'm like, I don't want to do it.
I can't even imagine. Well, this movie, as soon as I heard it had come out, and this was almost 20 years ago, well, 15 years ago, I was completely unenthusiastic about it because it was a remake of one of my all-time favorite movies and one that we've done before on this podcast. And that is the 2006 version of The Wicker Man, starring Nicolas Cage and directed by Neil LaBute.
Yeah.
This movie gets no love. It has been mocked in memes and videos and things ever since it came out. It has kind of gone down, not just as a bad remake, but just as a bad movie.
Yeah.
And early when we were talking about remakes, I remember you asked me, what do you think about remakes? And we were both pretty kind to the idea of remakes. We both said, who cares? Like, you want to remake a movie, sometimes it deserves it or needs it. I never felt that this movie ever deserved a remake. The original Wicker Man, and you can go back and listen to our episode on it, but I gushed all over it in that episode. It's just an interesting, odd, beautiful piece of filmmaking that's got a lot of different things going on. It's just intriguing, I think, from beginning to end. You just don't know what's happening, what's going on, and there's music in it. And
that's what I was going to say. It's weird, but for whatever reason, it works. Now, I've only seen it the one time that we watched it for the show. But I do remember it being weird. But there is like a whole musical number, right? Like in the bar.
Multiple, in the bar on the maypole. There's kind of a dance and singing scene outside where the girls are running naked and jumping around a fire. It's all through it, And the opening credit sequence has this gorgeous song over it. It's just a movie that defies description, really.
Right.
In such a good way. And like you said, it shouldn't work, but it does. It's just so oddball, but it just works beautifully.
Well, and somehow it managed to still be suspenseful. And I don't know about scary, but it was intriguing. I was definitely in it for the ride, and was curious as to how things were going to play out.
Yeah, well, it's a mystery in a way.
Yeah, and this movie is such I don't know, like, it doesn't stray that far. Like, it changes some central things, but it doesn't really stray all that far. Like, I read somewhere that something like 80% of the dialogue is verbatim from the original.
A lot of it is,
sometimes in different contexts, but still 80%, that's a lot. So you would think that somehow it would translate and hopefully even be better. It's awful.
Not just as a remake, it's just an awful movie. And, I'm going back to, again, we were very kind to the idea of remakes. And one thing that we had kind of both agreed on was, the original's still out there. Yeah. So if you want to remake it, go ahead and remake it. It's not like it's not like it erases the original from the map. But I have to amend that a little bit because I think part of what makes us feel a little cringy about remakes is this thought that remakes are here to expose, one thing you had said, to expose like a new generation to an older story.
Yeah.
And I just can't think of anything sadder than a new generation being like, oh, I heard The Wicker Man's like this amazing classic movie. Oh, let me go find, here we go. Well, it's a remake. It's going to be, I'll just watch this one instead. And then you can't go back and watch the original after you've watched this.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You can enjoy it.
But you won't want to.
I don't want this to be anyone's first exposure to the wonderful, odd treasure that the original Wicker Man is. Because this movie is so not a treasure in any way, shape, or form, except just kind of an encapsulation of what I love about Nicolas Cage and his weirdness. It's just a movie to laugh at and scratch your head at because it is just hilariously bad from start to finish.
It is. It's a real head scratcher though, because it shouldn't be so bad. Like,
no,
we can say lots of things about Nick Cage. You know, he's definitely got his. We've said this before. He's got his own style of acting. It's unique to him. He's built a huge successful career on it. The guy's talented.
Everybody gives him so much crap. I don't care. Like, everybody's got their thing. Nicolas Cage has his thing. Sean Connery has his thing. Like, so many actors have their thing. Why does everybody hate on Nicolas Cage so much?
I don't know.
I don't understand it.
I think maybe he's kind of an easy target, which I don't really get because I do think that he's very talented, but he's a little bit eccentric, you know, both on screen and off. But he doesn't, at least anything that I've seen him on, he knows how he's perceived, and he doesn't care. And he works in movies, you know, with people who appreciate him and where he can showcase his odd talent. Especially lately, he's been doing a lot in horror and sci-fi and some really interesting stuff. I've seen a couple of those movies, and it's Nick Cage. You're gonna get what you get from Nick Cage, but they're interesting movies. So that's one. He's good. And then you've got other really good people in this too. Like, it's
chock full of good people.
Yeah, like Ellen Burstyn. What are you doing in this movie? I don't understand it. Right. And I felt like she didn't really understand what movie she was in. Like,
no,
I thought that she thought it was very serious. and don't get me wrong, she is just stunningly beautiful in this movie. Like, she's an older woman and just strikingly gorgeous, and she looks great, and she doesn't do anything wrong, but why are you in this movie? And then Frances Conroy. I love Frances Conroy. She's done a lot with American Horror Story, but she's been around forever. She played Mrs. Putnam in The Crucible, and she was on 6 Feet Under. She's been around. She's great. And many, many other recognizable faces. On top of that, Neil LaBute was really kind of an up-and-coming director at the time. Want to hear a fun story?
Yeah.
I've met Neil LaBute. In 2001, I was studying abroad in London, and I was studying theater, and we went to plays, multiple plays every day. Neil LaBute was directing a play at the Almeida Theater called The Shape of Things, starring Paul Rudd, Rachel Weisz, Gretchen Mol, and one other guy whose name I can't think of. And I went and saw the show, and it was a really cool show. It was a medium-sized theater. It wasn't tiny, but it was fairly intimate, and the play was done in the round. I was sitting there with my sister and a friend who were there on the same trip as I was. We were sitting directly across from Alan Rickman.
Oh, wow.
Which was really cool. And after the show, the cast and the director did a meet and greet. So I met Paul Rudd and Rachel Weisz and all of them. Paul Rudd was kind. It was obvious that he wasn't into this whole meet and greet. I think they had to do it every night. And it was obvious that he wasn't into it. But it seemed like the reason he wasn't into it was because it was his birthday, and his mom and a lot of the rest of his family was there, like standing off in the wings, watching while people were like getting pictures with him and stuff. He was really, really nice and friendly, but it was pretty obvious that he would rather just be hanging out with his mom. Rachel Weisz, not so friendly, also clearly not into it. And
wow.
Not really afraid to show it. And Gretchen Mol was probably the least famous of the four people in the cast, and I saw her off at the bar sitting by herself, so I went over and had a drink with her, which was really cool and a fun story to tell. But I also met Neil LaBute. He was a youngish guy. I don't know how old he would have been at the time, but he was really nice too. A little bit smelly. I don't know if he was nervous or what, but he was really sweaty. I had the whole cast and him sign my program, and he was so sweaty that he like smudged his autograph. But nice guy, and kind like what he was kind of known for. I don't know if he's done much. I think he still writes a lot, but I don't know if he directs much. He was kind of known for really compelling human drama. And the play I saw, The Shape of Things, was a really, really compelling human drama. And so when I saw that he was the director, which I didn't know going in, I thought, well, this is cool because he can make this, he will do a good job of having really interesting, dynamic characters, and it'll be kind of this human drama. And I was just so disappointed. The whole thing seems really kind of pedestrian and nothing special. Like you said, it's just kind of a bad movie. I think that I wouldn't have such negative feelings about it if it weren't a remake of a movie that's really kind of considered a cult classic and that so many people cherish, If this were just a movie on its own, I could watch it and be like, oh, that was stupid, but whatever. It's just another stupid movie. I was thinking of you and how fond you are of the first one. And I almost got a little bit mad because I felt like this movie was kind of making a mockery of the first one.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Why would you make a remake of a movie that is well loved by at least some certain niche group just to make fun of it? And what I read was that, everybody does make fun of it, and they say that it's unintentionally hilarious because of Cage's melodramatic antics or whatnot. And years later, he did a bunch of interviews where he said, that was on purpose. We knew
they realized we're making this absurdist black comedy.
Right. And he said, it would have been much more clear if the producers had allowed us to do what we wanted to do. Apparently, he wanted to wear a handlebar mustache throughout.
Oh, God.
And then he also wanted to be burned in the bear suit because he thought the ridiculous nature of that would just make the whole thing much more horrifying. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know if he started saying that after Midsummer came out, because that's in part how Midsummer ends. But it just made, even hearing or reading those interviews where he said, oh, we knew what we were doing. We knew that it was, black comedy. That almost made me more mad.
Yeah, like, why are you doing it then?
Yeah.
Well, it's not billed as a comedy. You look at the poster art, you look at the trailers and things like that, and it's really hard for me to believe this because there's so much absurdity in here that just defies description. Like, it's not clever. It just comes across as incompetent filmmaking. Like, there's a moment where, and it's so quick that I don't even understand it, where there's like a dead guy on the beach and he reaches in and shakes him for a second, like he thinks he's going to wake him up, where he's this guy could not be more dead. I laughed out loud at that scene. And there was so much other stuff like this, just little things slipped in, huge plot holes. Oh, and I don't even think the movie has an internal consistency for the themes that it's trying to go for. I think Neil LaBute has also been accused of being misogynistic in some of his previous works. Mm-hmm. And even at the time this movie was coming out and they were doing interviews for this movie, people were asking him point blank, you've been accused of misogyny in the past. How would you, describe this movie? And he says, oh, well, this movie, kind of flips that idea on its head. And I hope you can see through that. It almost seemed like he's trying so hard to change the original Wicker Man into this, to like a response. Because in the original Wicker Man, it's this Summersisle, this place, right, that everybody there is fine and happy and kind of doing their own thing, and this inspector comes along and just kind of like starts being irritated at their lifestyle, essentially, just accusing people of things and pointing fingers, all to get to the bottom of this mystery of this missing girl. And yes, the townspeople are being weird and cagey, and the things that one person is saying don't seem to match up with what another person is saying, and then sometimes a person will kind of change their tune in the middle of a conversation, and it just draws you into the mystery more, like, what is going on with these people? But you never get the sense, you're like, okay, if something sinister is happening here, like, it's hidden.
Right.
In this movie, it's like, he goes out of his way to paint these people as not just sinister, but mean. Like, these people, like, their whole day is nothing but them scheming and conniving something. Because every person that Nicolas Cage encounters in his investigation on this island is like cackling or being really snide and saying things with clear double entendres or hidden meanings, or just not answering his question. And then he's like the worst investigator of the world by not pursuing it any further and just like, okay, well, that was weird, and just continuing to wander around on his bike.
On his bike. And a grown man in a suit on an old-fashioned bike will never not be funny. Like, every time he hopped on that bike, I just thought it was hilarious. And my favorite was at one point he stole the bike. I mean, he had to, I guess he stole them all because they weren't his, but like, I feel like at one point he just straight up took some lady's bike.
Step away from the bike.
Like, well, he is a cop, I guess, but I mean,
I guess he's a highway patrolman. Like, what? Like, all of a sudden you're a detective? No, sir. These are not the same things.
Right. Well, that explains why he's a shitty detective. Let's put it that way.
Like, he keeps brandishing, like, I'm the law. No, you're not. Like, you are a highway patrolman on leave. Like, you have no authority here. Go home.
Yeah, and he's also not even kind of like, in the first movie, now, we don't really see the beginnings of the guy being sent the letter. We just see him as he lands. But you get, he's in his official outfit. He's a police investigator. He's there on the authority of the crown and all this stuff. It's like, you get the idea he's officially been sent there to deal with the situation because he's gotten this random letter. And so he's been assigned to take care of it. Whereas in this movie, Nicolas Cage personally gets delivered this odd letter from what turns out to be like his fiancée, his ex-fiancée. It's saying that her daughter is missing. It just instantly personalizes it. Uh-huh. And so immediately the tone of the movie is so different from the first one. And then as the movie goes on, you realize that this daughter is his. It's
Which is
clunky.
So obvious. It is clunky, but it's also obvious. Like, that's never even a point of discussion. Like, clearly he must have some general idea of how long ago it was when they broke up. And so he never puts two and two together that this little girl is the exact age that she would be. You're right. It is. It's clunky and stupid. And in the first one, the conflict, I guess, between the Islanders and the detective is that he's a Puritan. Like, he is like uber religious, no sex before marriage, no drinking, nothing. And they are pagans and very, free spirited, free love, all this kind of stuff.
One with nature. Yeah.
Yeah. In this one, it's that he is a man and they are all women.
Yes. Oh my God. It's so stupid. And it's played stupid too. All the women are just snide and nasty, and there are men there, but I guess we're supposed to believe that their tongues have been cut out?
I think so. It's never stated directly. Well, one of them kind of like mumbles at some point, which it sounded like his tongue had been cut out. But yeah, they don't respond to questions or anything. There are hardly any men in the movie, and when you see them, they are just in the background. I mean, at least once you're on the island, I don't think any of the men speak ever.
Yeah.
And you just see them. I was going to say they're mules, but they're not. They're worker bees, because this is a beehive. The island is a beehive, and there's a queen, the men are the worker bees.
But it's so stupid because she continually refers to the girls as her hive. I think this isn't even internally consistent because there's only one queen in a hive. Uh-huh. If you're trying to make, this male-female thing, okay, I get it. All the men and all the bees are men except for one, and they're the drones, and they just serve the queen bee. Well, that's the hive, though. Don't call all your female followers and compatriots part of the hive. They're not. It's just a very imperfect metaphor. I think it's kind of ham-fisted in there for what they're trying to accomplish. And this just begs the question, I think, when you're doing remakes, like, you got to decide what are you going to change and why. You should have a reason for changing certain things. And I'm not against changing stuff. Get a different angle on the story, get a different take, explore different themes, modernize it, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm just scratching my head why they chose such a weird and difficult thing as to change the original story, which was that this this island has it's basically apples. They're really, really known for apples. They're like branded, and it's like these beautiful harvests that they get every year, and that's how the islanders, who are otherwise isolated, make all their money. And so it's very, very important that their yearly harvest of apples comes through. Why would you change that into beekeeping? Because
I mean,
maybe I don't know enough about beekeeping, but is beekeeping a cyclical thing? Like, do you have a harvest of honey that comes once a year, and then the rest of the year the bees are making it? I don't think so, right? Aren't they just always making honey?
Yeah, I don't really know. I have beekeeper friends that could tell me, but I don't know. But the reasoning behind it is because bees are a matriarchal society. But you're right, it doesn't, as I understand it, there's only one female bee, which is what you were just saying. There's only one, and the rest are men. So the metaphor doesn't really fully extend, but I think that's what they were going for. They're like,
well,
bees,
for sure.
It's bees. They're matriarchal. Okay, that we'll go for that.
Let's make the bee things, and now let's just shovel this in.
Women, feminism, go.
In the first movie, there's that moment where, and it's more subtle. I mean, nothing's really subtle, but it's played better, more naturally, I think, in the first movie, where the detective comes in and he goes to the bar and he's asking questions, and he notices on the wall all these photographs of the harvest. And there's one person in town who is the photographer, and they take pictures of the harvest every year. By the way, this made a lot more sense, in 1974 or whatever than it does in 2006. But so there's one person in town who knows how to take pictures. And he takes a picture of the harvest every year, and it's put up on the wall in the tavern. But there's the latest one is missing, and that's kind of central to the mystery. Why is the latest one missing? And in all these photos, it's girls displayed with, the harvest, like with abundance of stuff around them. And in this one, it's just photos of girls standing in like rings of flowers. Like every one of them is identical.
Yeah.
And when he does find the missing photo, I was intensely curious, like, how's he going to notice? What's the clue he's going to get from this photo? Because in the previous movie, you could see the girl's standing there and there are hardly any apples around her. And so he's like, oh, this is the year that the harvest was bad, just by looking at the photo. In this one, he sees the photo, flips it, I guess, to a note written on the back that just says the worst harvest on record or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, it's just, again, it's just so clunky. Like, why do you change things and make it harder for yourself to make a good movie?
It feels like an afterthought.
Oh,
now that you say that, I really hadn't read that Neil LaBute had been accused of misogyny, but now that you said it, it's in my head. And you're right. All the women are kind of, well, they're men haters. I mean, that they just are. I'm not. It's blatant on its face. It's not like it's not like I'm interpreting it in that way. Like they seem to literally hate men, and that's not a good look from a male director. Because they're all kind of shrewy and bitchy, and then you pit Nick Cage against them, and he automatically becomes misogynistic and sexist. And the way that he communicates with these women is, now to be fair, he's not greeted, he's not welcomed, but he's hostile with them too. There's one scene in particular where he walks into this woman's schoolhouse and she's stern with him, but he is straight up rude, just really aggressive with her. And then he addresses her students and goes back, and she's got some big verse of poetry or something written on the board, and he picks up his eraser and erases it. And as a school teacher watching this, I'm sitting here thinking, how dare you
you embrace this without asking.
How dare you erase my board, address my students, barge into my classroom unannounced, you're a complete stranger, and he's just rude to her. Again, she's presented as being very combative and shrewish also, but it's not a good look.
No.
I don't understand what the point is. What point is he trying to make? I feel like there's some interesting dichotomy between, strict Puritanism and paganism. What's the dichotomy here? I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. He's just mad that they're sort of anti-man. But it's not the running theme of the movie either, right? It's like this scene is especially true. In the first movie, this scene, and that's what makes it so different, right? Is that the people they're not unwelcoming to the inspector in the first movie. They're not assholes hostile, to him.
Right.
No, they're just cagey.
Yeah.
But part of why they're cagey, well, we know why they're being cagey. I mean, they're also deliberately being cagey. But they're also, the things that they're saying kind of make sense within their belief system. Like he says, she's dead. And they're like, no, she's not dead. And he's like, what are you talking about? Where is she? Well, she's in the ground. You mean she's dead? Well, actually, we don't use that term, that she's dead, because this isn't our belief that people actually die. They get reincarnated. So there's kind of this sort of explanation behind it that kind of makes sense. And the people are very patient with him in explaining this, particularly the school teacher. This is one of those scenes where the dialogue between the old one and the new one are almost identical. And the school teacher in this movie is played by Molly Parker. It was so cool to see her in this. And she performs well in this movie. She's always good.
I don't know her.
Oh, God. She's been in... Oh, she's one of those like people. I recognize her face. I'm like, oh man, every time I see her, I love to watch her, but I can't remember exactly what I know her from the most. Some TV show. Anyway, she was great doing what she needed to do, but she's bitchy and hostile towards him. And this other guy in the first movie comes and interrupts this woman's class, but she's smiling and she's patient and she's nice, and she calls him outside to explain to him. And it's like, sir, maybe we need to step outside and I'll explain it to you out there. And then they have a nice little scene. Now, he's still appalled by everything, because she's been teaching the class about phallic symbols and the fertility rites and things like that. But in this one, she's like, we need to go outside, grabs him out there, and she's just looks like she's on the verge of tears and wanting to punch him out just because he's a man, basically. It's just so shallow compared to what we get in the first movie. Even though the scenes are written exactly the same, they are played so differently that, like you said, I think the words that you use, that it makes a mockery of the first movie, is very on point. It really is. It makes me mad.
Me too, kind of. And I don't even care that much.
I wasn't gonna get mad about it, but now I am kind of mad about it.
But the inspector in the first movie also doesn't understand or agree with their way of life, but he doesn't approach them disrespectfully. And he's not, I don't know. I mean, he can be a little bit stern when he talks to some of them, but he's respectful and almost, he's got a charm to him.
Yeah, he's very sympathetic.
He's very sympathetic. He's got a charm to him, and there's just more by adding the connection between him and this woman, then that removes the opportunity for his kind of flirtatious thing with, was it the barmaid that he kind of had a flirty thing going on with in the first one?
The barmaid's in the original, her name was Willow, and so, she was the one who was kind of tempting him throughout the movie.
In this one, the barmaid is played by a woman, oh gosh, I'm going to look her up, Diane Delano, and I recognized her right away. She was the bus driver from Jeepers Creepers 2. But I just thought it was funny because in the original, she's kind of almost this comical Alpine Swiss, Swiss Miss kind of, like in Lederhosen or something. Right. and she's very sexy. Wasn't that woman like a playmate or something?
Yeah,
I don't remember. But anyway, Diane Delano is a big, hulking woman.
Yeah.
Very intimidating. I found that kind of humorous to kind of flip that a little bit. And I like her. She's a funny actress. She doesn't have much to do here. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you say about the plot? Okay, so I guess we should talk about another big difference is they give him a tragic backstory, which I don't really, it seems forced and stupid and unnecessary. It doesn't ultimately lead to anything.
I thought it was going to tie in somewhere.
It's just confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a traffic cop. He gets behind this station wagon and a doll falls out the window and he picks it up and he pulls him over and it's this single mom and she's like, oh, we've been on the road for a long time and the daughter's bored and the daughter's kind of bratty and he gives her the doll back and she throws it out the window again and he goes into the highway without looking idiot,
Right.
to pick it up. And I guess kind of the implication is that this semi-truck maybe had to swerve to avoid hitting him. And so
And hit the
instead,
cars,
yeah, it crashed into the station wagon and everything blew up. And he tried to, like, he busted through the back windshield and was reaching for the girl, but then the whole thing blew up and he got blown back into the highway and they're presumably dead. Okay, fine. Well, so then he's messed up by that, and that's when he gets this letter and decides to go off on this investigation. Doesn't make any sense. But then he also continues having flashbacks to it, and they are so clunky. Like, they don't even look good. Like, they're in this weird black and white. The first one is when he's on the ferry. It's not even to the island. He eventually has to, like, charter a plane to get to the island or whatever. But he's on a ferry somewhere, and he sees a little girl standing at the rails, a little blonde girl, just like the girl in the car. And it, like, flashes to black and white, and then he sees the semi hit her on the ferry, like, right in front of him. Super weird. And then he continues to have these flashbacks, and, like, the little girl is in his flashbacks. The little girl disappears, like she's not there anymore. I still have no idea what all of this was about, because it doesn't you kept thinking it was somehow going to be connected, but it never was.
It just seems like, and you're right, and there are reasons why we think it's connected. Number one, that little girl looks like every other little girl on that island.
Right.
She looks a lot like the Rowan, the girl he's looking for. She's wearing a red cardigan, I believe, in the car and in his flashbacks, which just like the girl that he's
on the
looking
island,
for.
right?
On the island. So I thought there would be some literal connection there. It just seems to just, A, chew up the scenery, and B, serve to maybe show us that he's troubled by his inability to save this girl, and so this is his redemption, as he's going to work his darndest to save this other girl. But it's no longer needed because he now already has a reason, right?
Yeah.
15 minutes into the movie, we find out, no, this girl's his own daughter. So
Oh, it's later. They draw it out way longer than that. But
yeah, that's true.
The lady, Willow, played by Kate Bean, I don't know anything about her. She's, aside from the fact that she's very, very beautiful, but she's shady too.
Yes. And he doesn't even care.
No, and like, it seems like he is willing to overlook how incredibly shady she's being, and by shady I mean that she just plays dumb. Like, every time that he asks her about anything, she's like, I don't know.
It's a picture. That's all.
No, that is not all. Why didn't you tell me Rome was a part of all this? Huh? The rituals.
I don't know.
Well, try, because I'm out there bouncing around in circles and I can use a little help.
Edward, why are you yelling at me?
How about this for starters? Our daughter is part of your worst harvest on record. Now, you said before that they blamed her, so why don't you tell me about this?
It's just, it's a ceremony that we have. I don't know anything else.
You live here.
Like, it's so annoying.
Or doesn't answer, or walks away, or something like that.
Right.
And he's like, all right. And then he hops on his bike and wanders around the island some more.
I know. But it's like he's willing to overlook all of that because there's maybe some chance that they're going to hook up. Like,
Yeah.
She's the only woman that he's nice to. It doesn't seem weird to him at all that they met, had this love affair. She disappeared, was gone forever, and is now contacting him and playing totally dumb. Like, she had this baby on this island and has been living there for at least 7 years. And anytime he asks her about it, he goes, I don't know. I don't know. What? You live here. I don't believe for a second that you don't know what's going on.
You guys know each other to the point of engagement, right? They were engaged at one point. This is the first he's hearing about this island that she grew up on that's so freaking weird, in this cult or whatever that she grew up in.
I don't know. Maybe she didn't tell him. I mean, that...
It's possible.
Because, I mean, God, spoiler alert, who cares? But she's been playing him literally the whole time. Like, this is a long game that they are playing, which also is bullshit. Like, the whole motivation of this is so stupid. I guess I don't know. Eventually, he meets up. Like, he does lots of investigating. He investigates the school. It's all really stupid. Everybody's really shady. He meets up with some men on the road. I thought it was hilarious, this scene where he meets up with these
guy?
Yeah, where he helps the guy. Okay, so there's this like horse-drawn cart of all of these cut logs that like these men have been harvesting or whatever, and he sees that this guy's having problems with them. Like a few of them have fallen off, so he's like, can I help you? And the guy doesn't say anything because presumably his tongue has been cut out. But then Nick Cage starts helping him, and in the act of helping him causes all of the logs to fall off. And then he gets all pissed off and leaves. Like, oh, thanks for your help, sir.
You came and made it worse, then got pissed off and left.
Very helpful. And like, there's so many dumb things. Like the parts that are supposed to be suspenseful. At one part, he's like looking around in a barn. I don't even remember what he was looking for.
He chased a girl in there.
Okay, or did he? Like,
right.
Is he imagining things? Who knows? But he chases a girl in there or something. And then there's a very suspenseful moment when he, like, falls through a hole in the floor. Just apropos of nothing. Like,
Right.
that's not suspense.
It's just a thing. And then
it wasn't a trap. You know, yeah, you go snooping around in old barns, you might fall through the floor. These things happen. It's not a plot point in a movie.
Right.
Oh my God! And there are other ones like that too. I don't.
What I love is the bees. Are we going to talk about the bees now?
Well, yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say. Like, another part where the music tells us that this is a very suspenseful part is when he just finds himself amongst all these beehives.
Yes.
Like, well, pay attention to where you're going, you stupid.
He's so dumb. He's allergic to bees, which is a point which is pressed home to us several times.
Yeah.
He's on his bike, and he's looking at something far off in the distance, and he just rolls his bike forward a little bit to bump a beehive, flips out, and instead of going back the way he came from, runs further into the field with all the beehives and amongst all the bees.
Like, screaming and flailing about.
Falling down. Then he wakes up, and the doctor has picked him up and taken him to Sister Summersisle. So in the previous one, it was Lord Summersisle. Now it's Sister Summersisle's place, where he's going to go meet Sister Summersisle.
But
So he
wait,
gets up.
I also like this. So, yeah, he is, like, attacked by the bees. So he wakes up. He's fine, but his clothes are off. Like, he still has his underclothes on. But the doctor is sitting there, Francis Conroy's sitting there, and he's like...
When they brought me to you, you were near death, clearly. So I treated the danger in the old way.
What? Like...
What are those? He doesn't even want to know.
What are the old ways?
He doesn't even ask.
I'm just thinking, like, I don't want to wake up with my clothes off and be told that I've been healed in the old ways. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of, like, I remember I had to, personal story time, I had to at one point get a colonoscopy, and I told Alan, because afterwards, he's like, how was it? I was like, it was fine. They knocked me out, and I woke up. It was like nothing happened. They could have done anything to me. I have no idea. That's what I was thinking with him. Like,
Oh, man.
the old ways.
I love it because, you know, he wakes up in her house, and that's happened. And then he goes outside to talk to Sister Summersisle in the garden, surrounded by bees.
Yeah.
And then they chat, and the whole time they're chatting, there's bees buzzing around, and he's occasionally slapping his neck and stuff. Then they go on a walk amidst the beehives. I'm like, what? Why are you? I thought this was a big problem for you.
Right. And it's
And
hilarious.
now he can just walk around amongst the bees. No
This
issue.
part is so funny because at this point, like when they're walking amongst the bees, he's like pulling up his collar and like hiding it, or like hiding his face in it. It just looks so stupid.
It's really dumb.
It's hilarious, but it's stupid. I do have to say, I mean, Ellen Burstyn took this part and ran with it. She's very regal. I just can't get over. I have no idea how old she is now or how old she was then, but just stunningly, stunningly beautiful. And, you know, seeing her out in amongst all these flowers and all this vegetation, she's in this long flowing gown. She just looks fantastic. And she's regal. She has a regal presence. And she kind of just doesn't put up with his nonsense, or she remains very calm with him. Her performance in this role is not unlike Christopher Lee's performance in the first one.
Well, I think it's a pale imitation of
Fair.
of Christopher Lee's conversation with the man in the previous movie is, again, almost word for word exactly the same, but it just feels better. It's more natural. It's whatever. This feels like a woman saying lines. And she's also, like, the thing about Christopher Lee in the original, he's so loose and calm about it.
Yeah.
And because he's just explaining, like, he has nothing to hide. This is what we do on the island. And he's almost a picture of patience when this guy, who's this uptight Christian, with his rigid belief system, that is so offended by their ways on the island, he's got to have extra patience. And he does that so naturally. This woman, you just feel, is on the edge of, she's just holding it in.
See, and I felt like she treated him and talked to him like she doesn't have time for this nonsense. Like,
yeah,
it, almost as though anytime he spoke, she would have preferred to have been rolling her eyes. Like, ugh,
exactly.
Shut up,
yeah,
stupid man. And she says something about like men having their place, and Summersisle explains the whole history of the island and talking about how like they make sacrifices to the great mother spirit, and she's telling this like her ancestors did all of this. And I'm thinking it also, I think, hurts the story to transplant this to the United States.
Oh yeah, because
that kind of deep heritage, unless you transfer it from the old world, we don't have that kind of history, really.
No.
Like, we don't. We're not old enough to have that kind of history. Now, I do think that the implication was this was like old world European tradition that did get transplanted over here and changed in some way, because they made this sacrifice for the harvest, and it used to be a blood sacrifice, but now in the new world they burn people, right? Isn't that what they said?
That's how it is in the old movie. Yeah, that's kind of, well, in the old movie, there are different ways that they take care of the sacrifice, but the most effective is the burning, apparently, something like that.
Gotcha. Anyway, so and she tells him that men are important for breeding. She says that procreation is the desire of the goddess, and he gives her this, he like proselytizes about murder. He's like, murder is murder, the law is the law, and you have to follow the law. She's like, okay, whatever. And then he hops on his bicycle and gets out of there
and leaves. Well, he does get permission to exhume the grave, and then he finds a doll inside. And at that moment, he hears some crying coming from the crypt nearby. And so he decides to go down into the crypt and investigate where that's coming from. And he finds a cardigan with Rowan's initials on it or whatever. And so he decides to go swimming through the crypt.
Yeah.
And as he comes back around, somebody closes the crypt door. Like, it's the door. It's like a trap door in the floor, basically.
Yeah.
That gets closed on him and locks him in there. And he has his flashback or whatever. And then Willow just happens to be coming by, I guess.
Whatever. It was probably her that locked him in there.
And comes down and saves him. Well, here's why is somebody trying to kill him now?
Why is anybody doing any of this? It doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense. They are leading him on this wild goose chase for no reason. And then my favorite part among many, she lets him out and he's like, go back to your house or whatever. And he says, something bad's about to happen.
I can feel it. No, that's...
Oh my God. So funny.
But this is after he very impassionately shows her the doll.
This hers? Tell me!
Yes, I think yeah.
How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
And she's like, I don't know. Calm down. And who cares? Like,
right?
I don't know. Is that supposed to be some connection to the fire in his dream, like, or the accident in the beginning? Like, I'm really questioning Was that woman and that little girl in that car? Like, did these people set that up?
I know, right? This is what I thought. There'd be some connection, but...
Because I almost feel like that's maybe suggesting that they did. But it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But something bad is about to happen. He can feel it. So he goes back to Summersisle's house and he finds a gross old man in a bed. And was the man bee stung? Is that why he looked so gross?
I don't know.
I think he was supposed to be bee stung.
I just love how he starts opening doors, opens the door, finds the weird guy in the bed, looks in, oh, okay, and just keeps going.
Yeah. And then in the next room, there's a naked young woman in a chair just completely covered in bees. But then he stops looking because he doesn't find Summersisle lounging luxuriously in her bed upstairs, attended by young women. And then we get
he couldn't be bothered to go up the stairs, I guess.
No, he had seen enough. Something bad is going to happen. He has places to be. And so he goes out and he runs into that Sister Rose again, the school teacher, and she's wearing a bird mask. And I'm like, thank God, because I knew this was the end. I had been looking at the time. So, like, I kept, okay, thank God, 30 minutes left. Oh, my God, thank God, only 20 minutes left. And then we get to this part, and I'm like, oh, we're getting to the end, thank God. So she's in a bird mask, and she's ready to celebrate life and death, whatever that means. And he pulls a gun on her and steals her bike. Yes!
Step away from the bike.
And then he runs into these creepy old twins. There are tons of twins. What is with the twins?
I don't understand the twin thing.
I don't either, but there are lots of them. Like Sister Rose has a twin, and there's some...
These creepy twin sisters speak at the same time, but they only have like 2 lines in the whole movie, and we only see them
They
twice.
run into him, and it is he. And he keeps running. And he goes to the pub, and the men are in there, but they won't help. And that's what he says. And I remember this from the first one when he breaks into some lady's house, and he's like, I am going to search every inch of this town over the next 3 hours. He proceeds to do that. And that's when he finds the pilot. It's the pilot who he finds dead on the beach.
Yes.
They killed him.
Why did they kill him?
Because he brought him there.
But they wanted him there.
That's true.
So why would they kill him?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. So then he keeps running around. He punches out Sister Beach, and Summerisle now is leading this ceremony, and she's all painted ceremoniously, and she's got her hair down, and everybody's in costume in these animal costumes.
It's a pale imitation of the first movie.
It is.
Where all of this is so nicely set up because he goes to the library and he reads this book about the ancient traditions of this, and it lays out like 3 or 4 things: the fool, the leader who dances in front, and the swordsman with the star who like cut the head off of someone. And so even that bit is full of tension, and of course a whole bunch of irony because he ends up in the fool costume.
Right.
At the end of it, he's like the fool, like literally. It's quite cool.
You're right. I had forgotten about that. I will say that from an aesthetic perspective, I really liked these costumes. I think that the costumes in the original were probably more real to life. Like these look like movie, they're very intricate. But anyway, so it's all this big ceremony, and much of this is just like the original. He sees the girl Rowan tied to a post as though she's going to be burned.
He's in a bear costume.
Yeah. Full bear costume, which, I mean, good in that, that would fully disguise you. But again, just as a grown man in a suit on a bicycle looks kind of ridiculous, a grown man running around in a full body bear suit, it just looks silly.
He comes running out of the woods and just joins the line,
with no explanation of where he got it.
Know this or whatever. Like he's supposed to be disguised, but and he kind of like lowers the jaw to talk to Willow real quick because he still thinks she's on his side, and so he's sneaking into this line. And then he just leaves the jaw down so you can clearly see his face, which I guess is painted black or brown or something. But when he takes the costume off later, there's no makeup on his face at all. Oh, yeah.
The other thing, when he meets Willow, he's like, I thought I told you to go back to the house. She looks at him and goes, I had to come.
And And then he sees Rowan, tied to the tree, like you said, and he runs up there by himself in the bear costume and punches out
another lady
with this huge right hook. This bear just punches this woman in the face.
It's hilarious. And he grabs. Yeah, no, you can't imagine. It is just how it sounds, and it's pretty darn funny. And he grabs her, and he picks her up, and he starts running through the woods, as he did in the first one, and then he puts her down so that he can take off his bear costume and they can run together. But she runs ahead, and he can't catch her, and she gets ahead, and you see that she runs right into the arms of Mother Summersisle or whatever, and Willow is standing right there next to Mother Summersisle, and turns out, she is Summerisle's daughter, and this was all set up from the beginning. God, she has so many lines here that are, it's just ridiculous. Something like, the game of the hunter hunting the hunted. What? Mm-hmm. And Willow's in on it, and Summersisle says, it's your destiny. We require a stranger, but one who is connected to us by blood. So like I said, this was a long game. Apparently they sent Willow out into the world to get knocked up so that she could come back, and I guess 7 years later or whatever, then they would lure him back. But the thing is, he has to come of his own free will. So she says, you have come of your own free will to keep this appointment with the Wicker Man. That's fine, but why this whole cat and mouse thing on the island? Like, he came to the island of his own free will. Why didn't you just have him show up the next day, which is the day when you need to kill him? As soon as he gets off the plane, be like, welcome, now you die. Like, I don't understand what this whole charade is. It doesn't make any sense. What is the point?
That's why all of these words in the mouths of these characters in this situation are they fall flat. They might be pulled from the old movie, but they just don't have the same effect. They don't even make the same sense. Because in the old movie, this is like a revelatory moment, and you're just like, oh my God, like, he really did come here of his free will. He stayed of his own free will. They were actively encouraging him to leave.
Right.
And all the stuff that happens to him on the island, there's testing involved, right? Because they needed a virgin. And so, he's being tempted by Willow, but he doesn't succumb to that. And so, all of this is sort of like to affirm that they have the right person that fits all of the requirements that they need. Here, it's just the guy that they lured, and I guess he came of his own free will because he, wasn't dragged kicking and screaming to the island in the first place. That's it.
Right.
So it's just lame.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And so he points his gun at Summersisle and pulls the trigger, but it's empty, and Willow shows that she has the bullets, and she drops them all.
Right. I guess she's had those in her hand the whole time, just ready to show him.
And at this point, now, we saw the theatrical release, and at this point, it kind of just cuts to the crowd, or maybe it cuts to black or something, and you only hear what's happening. He calls them bitches.
You bitches! This is murder! And you're doing it for nothing! Killing me won't bring back your goddamn honey! No, no, no! I'm not one of you! I don't believe in your gods! Ah, my legs!
You're just hearing this. Like, it sounds like it was recorded ADR. Oh, they just played it over this. It's, obviously not stock footage, but that's what it looks like. Like, I guess maybe they cut this for the rating or something, because it's different in the unrated version.
It's laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. And then you see him, they've revealed the Wicker Man to him, which is huge, and they pulley him up there by the ankles. The daughter, Rowan, lights the fire, and everybody in the crowd starts chanting, "The drone must die." And I didn't even know what that meant. I had to look it up. But drone bees, their only function is to mate. They don't even have a stinger. They just mate, and then when they do mate, their penis tears off and take, just like, bees with stingers, like their insides are connected to the stinger and they sting and their insides get ripped out. Same thing happened with the drone's dick. Like it falls off and tears all their insides out. So after mating, they die. So apparently the drone must die, and he screams as he burns, and Dr. Moss takes a picture of the burning, and the Wicker Man collapses. And I remember the ending of the original was so great. Like, it was just the best, like one of the best shots I've ever seen, where the camera just kind of pans up and back on the Wicker Man as you see it burning, and you just and then it fades in on the setting sun in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it just looked so great. Well, here, it just collapses. And then, in the version that we saw, which is the theatrical version, I think that the unrated version was released like on DVD and Blu-ray, but we'll talk about that in a second. In this version, cut to black, 6 months later, and Honey, who we've not mentioned, played by Lily Sobieski, that was a blast from the past. Haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah.
Honey and Willow pick up James Franco and Jason Ritter in a bar, and Honey says to James Franco, when you leave here, where are you going? And he's like, I don't know, I guess home. And she's like, when you go, will you take me with you? And then you hear bees buzzing, and you hear Malice, the Nick Cage, is, in the background, and then that's the end. Oh, and I thought that was kind of funny, but did you watch the other ending?
The cut? Oh, you mean the bee singing one?
Yeah,
the one that has memes all over?
Yes. Well, that was the thing. Like, I finished the movie, I was like, wait, where is that scene? Did I miss it? No, it's the unrated ending.
Nicolas Cage just basically gets a cage put over the top of his head, and then they pour bees down in it. He just goes crazy.
What is it? What is it? What is it? Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Oh, my eyes! My eyes! Ah! Ah!
And then he dies. But then they bring him back to life with an EpiPen so they can burn him alive. That was nice. That was considerate.
Oh.
Why?
I don't understand why they even burn him. Why?
Or why the bees? Like, just to torture him? Is it a ceremonial thing? They know he hates bees.
At least it kind of makes sense. Like, I guess if they're going to do the bee thing and he's allergic to bees and whatnot, if you kill him with the bees, that kind of makes... Like, can't that be your sacrifice? You know?
Right.
Then why do you have to burn him?
I don't know. I don't know which ending I like better. I actually kind of liked the concept of them sending out these young women and sexing them up and having them lure men, to mate or whatever. I kind of liked that idea. It seemed, I don't know. The whole thing's stupid. So to say that it seems silly is redundant. The whole thing is dumb.
We've seen that kind of thing before. Like, it's
vampire
like
movies, sure, all kinds of stuff.
Hostile type thing. Logically speaking, I guess they're just prepping guys in case they have a bad harvest. Like, they don't know they're going to have a bad harvest.
I don't know. I think they need these girls. They need these little blonde girls for their harvest. So I think they're just sending girls out into the world to get knocked up and come back, and then 7 years later they can lure these men for sacrifices.
They should be hooking up with blonde guys, really.
Yeah, right?
They want to keep them blonde.
I couldn't believe, like, this very last scene, which is 2 or 3 minutes. I'm like, is that James Franco? Is that Jason Ritter? Like,
I know, right? That was a nice little treat.
It's weird. Anyway, yeah, like, I honestly was kind of looking forward to seeing this just because it is notorious. I mean, it spawned so many memes, and it's just kind of a joke, really. And Nick Cage gets pissed off about it when people talk about it like that, because he's really proud of it and proud of his performance in it. It just seems like somewhere along the line, people weren't on the same page. Like, if he thought that he was going over the top and going for kind of dark comedy, it doesn't read that way.
No.
The rest of it doesn't read that way. The tone is just all over the place. Like, I just don't know what to make of it. And even the filmmaking, I think, is just okay. I think that a lot of it was saved by the fact that it was filmed in really beautiful locations that were interesting to look at, but there was nothing particularly innovative or skillful about the way that it was shot. The score, I don't remember anything about it. Like, usually, we can point to some things and say, well, they tried, this was good, this was good. This just seems like a misfire on pretty much every level. I don't get it. And I get why it's been the subject of ridicule, but really, it wasn't fun to watch.
No.
I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to be so bad it's good. I wanted to laugh with it and at it, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't fun. I was bored.
Yeah. I think I did myself a disservice by watching the original again before I watched this.
Yeah, probably.
That made this even more painful. I mean, it helped because, like I said, I could recognize that so much of the dialogue was the same, but it just emphasized how much worse it was, and it just exposed all those plot holes. It made you wonder why, and it's just like, my God, don't take something so great and make something so, like you said, it's like a mockery of it. It's so bad that it's sort of a mocking it, and that kind of pisses me off. So I guess we found like a spot where I just don't care for remakes in this way. If they're going to do this, I hate for somebody's first experience with the Wicker Man to be this movie, because I don't think I could ever convince them to go back and watch the original. And then I think if they did go back and watch the original, because kind of like more or less the ending's been spoiled for them.
Right.
It just taints their viewing of it, and it's not going to be as impactful.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's really a shame.
I mean, I guess the good news is this movie is notorious. It has a reputation, so people know, I think.
Yeah, going into it.
I mean, maybe I guess your casual viewer who's like, I like Nick Cage. Let's look for a Nick Cage movie I haven't seen. Maybe they wouldn't know about the notoriety, but I think anybody who likes horror, who's familiar with horror, they know about the notoriety of this movie and that people consider it ridiculous. So
right.
Hopefully they would go in with that perspective, or they would just say, well, I'll check out the original. Hopefully, but...
I really hope so. Well, thanks again for another episode. It's been a really wonderful month doing remakes. Want to really thank our patrons for the idea.
It's fun.
And we hope that we did you good. If you would like to become a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/Chainsaw Podcast. Find us on the web. Just Google Two Guys and a Chainsaw Podcast, and you'll find our website. Check out our Instagram page. If you're on Instagram, we're just trying to beef that up, put clips up and things, make things a little more shareable to try to reach out to another audience. Please do that. One of the things that our patrons have allowed us to do is get a little bit better about promoting ourselves out there on social media. So you'll see a lot more little goodies here and there as well that'll be shareable with your friends. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast, share us with some friends and write a review if you're so inclined on any one of your favorite podcast hosting sites. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! I'm out of my house!